Well over a decade ago, I started traveling all over the world, and it became a majority of the time kind of thing where I spent a lot of my time in countries all over the world learning the stuff and meeting the people that have formed what Nomad Capitalist is today. Back 7 or 8 years ago, I left the United States for good and went back only a handful of days in that time before ultimately expatriating from the country and leaving for good. And there's a lot of talk. We've been interviewed by various news outlets. You see articles everywhere from the New York Times to the BBC. Why are so many Americans giving up their citizenship? Now, in this year of chaos, you see so many Americans who are Googling, where can I move overseas? How do I get out? People are increasingly uneasy in the U.S. and also I think in the Western world in general. 2020 has been an interesting year. The U.S. government, for example, if you want to renounce your citizenship, it's been harder than ever because embassies and consulates simply don't make appointments. The ones they make, they generally cancel. And so if you've wanted to expatriate from the United States for good, whether it's for the oft-touted tax reasons or whether you're just someone like me who just realizes the country's heading in the wrong way and I just want a sense of peace being away from this, even though my taxes were already pretty low overseas, if that's you, you have a hard time doing that. And I've talked to people this year who wish they could renounce for whatever reason. You're certainly entitled to renounce for the sole goal of saving money on tax. You don't have to stay there if you don't want. And so they said, actually you do, because we're not honoring your appointment. Coming in, signing 2 forms, raising your hand, and handing them some cash is too much for them to handle. We've seen travel restricted. We've seen people not be able to go overseas to do things like open bank accounts. I've been working with some of our lawyers around the world in some countries to allow bank accounts that require physical presence to be opened through power of attorney. But not every bank allows that. And so not every investment opportunity allows you to do that. In countries like Cambodia, for example, you need to go, if you're buying a property, and put your fingerprint on the title. You've got to be there. And I think people realize, right now in the last year, we've developed more approaches for remote bank account opening. You can open a bank account, whether it's Switzerland, Liechtenstein, or just somewhere an emerging world country that's easy and cheap. You can do that from home. But what I would suggest everyone do as a first step is take a trip somewhere. It's possible, even with a U.S. passport, there are places that are open. You can go to Turkey, you can go to Serbia, you can go to Montenegro, you can go to Armenia. There are other places that are opening up. You go there. This does not have to be the be-all, end-all bank account, but you go there to a place where you can go as a tourist and open a bank account. You go, you take your $100, your $1,000, your $5,000, whatever it is. You go and open the bank account. You put the money in the bank account while you're there. And then you go around and you look around the city and you realize how in this place, it's not as bad as you thought. Now, maybe the culture's a little bit different. I'm not saying you're going to go and live in Armenia. I'm not saying you're going to go and live in Turkey. But I want you to choose a place that's a little bit off the wall. And I want you to go and I want you to see. Istanbul may not be for me, but my goodness, they've got a lot of Hermes stores around here. This place, they got everything you need. They have tasty food. People aren't murdering each other in the streets. I don't know, whatever the stereotypes that people around you have, go and see that they're not true. We work on 3 different things here at Nomad Capitalist. One is the financial part. Part of that could be asset protection. I have a bank account in another country. If I'm an American, it's going to be reportable. If I'm living in some country, it may be reportable. But it's at least a place where I can put my money and it's far away from people that might want to grab it. I can also do that with corporations, trusts, etc. That's financial. There's also financial diversification. I want different currencies, I want different asset classes, I want to own real estate somewhere else, etc. Then there's taxes. Okay? Again, a lot easier if you're moving somewhere else to lower your taxes. Then there's citizenship. Do I want a residence in a country? Do I want a citizenship in a country? Which of those things would satisfy you? But figure out which residence permit or permits that you want. A residence permit could be your ability to have access to a country. So let's say you want to live in Europe. As an American, you may not be able to get in at all during the pandemic, but under normal circumstances, you can get into the borderless Schengen area for 90 out of every 180 days. So if you just want to live in Europe, that's not going to work. You have to come, you have to go. Now, can you go and cool your heels in Croatia or Montenegro or Cyprus? Sure, but you'll need a residence permit if you want to spend more time in, let's say, Portugal or Greece or Latvia. There's a number of different Schengen zone countries to let you get a residence permit, either by showing that you have income, showing that you have wealth, starting a business in some cases, maybe committing to pay a little bit of taxes, hiring 3 or 10 or however many employees. or making some kind of investment in real estate or a larger golden visa investment. So that's what you want to get. I think every American who's successful needs a second citizenship. Any American at all who's concerned about what's happening needs a second citizenship. Now, the fastest way for most people to get a second citizenship is a citizenship by investment program, generally in the Caribbean. There are others in Europe and Turkey and Vanuatu and other programs we don't talk about that much. But by and large, most people are going to want to look at the Caribbean. You might look at Malta or something like that in Europe. Or if you don't want to spend that much money, you might look at a golden visa program. That's a slower burn, slower pathway to citizenship. You might look at some kind of paper residence. You might just look to put in your time. So let's just use the example of living in Mexico, for example. You get your Mexico residence permit, and eventually that could lead to citizenship. Asian countries like Thailand generally won't, but European, Latin American countries often will. And so figure out how you want to get a second citizenship, and then figure how your U.S. citizenship plays into the equation. So if you totally want to detach yourself from the U.S. tax system, reporting system, business requirements where you have to run your business a certain way under U.S. regulations, the only way to get out of that is to give up your citizenship. And so it's a very bold move, and certainly someone who still has some love for the U.S. or still desire to spend there, it's going to be a harder decision than for someone who, just doesn't really care that much, doesn't care to go back, or doesn't care if something changed and they couldn't go back. It shouldn't take Joe Biden to convince you that the United States and most other Western countries like it are moving in a direction that wants to take more people's wealth, especially people who are very successful. They want to blame successful people, they want to blame entrepreneurs, they want to shame. That's the direction. Whether Biden wins or Trump wins for 4 years, there may be a reprieve if Trump wins. But what I've been saying for 4 years is just because Trump won, everyone started to feel, everything's so great now. Our guy won. Nothing can happen to us. And there's this reverse. It's like the opposite. There's this arrogance. Oh, we're untouchable. Trump won. Oh, yeah, really? You think like the Congress became more... You had AOC under Trump. You had all these different people who were gaining power, who were moving the velocity away. Trump was a 4-year reprieve. Or, other right-wing politicians could be reprieve. I see people being too arrogant on one end, and I see them being too afraid on the other end. Look at momentum. Look at velocity. Do a gut check. Figure out, what do I really think is going to happen? Who cares if people agree with you? Who cares if I agree with you? If you think that Biden is single-handedly going to be the end of the United States, then yes, I would sell everything. Or insert name of other politician here. Or if you dig deep and you realize, I don't like the guy, but maybe I want to do a more staggered removal that Andrew's talking about, maybe that's what we come to. I think it really has to be your decision, but it has to be one that you make in a logical space.